Welcome to the American Diversity Report podcasts, where we interview interesting change makers and diverse innovators. I'm Deborah Levine, the American Diversity Report editor and your host. And with me today, we are fortunate to have Eileen Koteles. Eileen is an actor and choreographer. Raising her three sons, she realized the gift of teaching through the arts. Now returning to the stage in the one-woman show, Becoming Dr. Ruth, she finds she is still teaching through the arts. And the support of the arts as a platform for tolerance is definitely part of her makeup. So welcome, Eileen.
Hi, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you and to hear about your work today and in the past. Why don't you tell us how you got started?
Thank you. This is so great to be on your show, Deborah. I really appreciate it. It's a real honor, and because you have done so much for diversity and tolerance and bringing people together. And I'm going to go back to tell you about how I got started, but the things that have happened recently, we lost Sidney Poitier recently, a fabulous actor. And he said, movies bring people together. It's one of the reasons he became an actor. He did things that put African-American actors in a good light and showed it so beautifully. And that's what theater does too. And live theater just brings people together with so much emotion, and it's wonderful. So that is a passion of mine. But starting out from a very young age, dance and theater and Judaism played a mix in my life in a very big way. And I did watch the podcast that you did with Judd Mescon, where you're talking about Jews of the South. And my mother was actually born in Elizabethton, Tennessee.
Really?
Yes. And it was the first Jew baby in that area. And so my grandfather had come down from Cincinnati and opened a dry goods store, which is the story of so many Jews in the 20s. It was 1922. And there was a line of people when she was born in the upstairs apartment to come in and see what she looked like, to see if she indeed had horns. I couldn't believe I went. But, people had seen, I guess, the Michelangelo statue of Moses, and he has the horns. And so is that why we often say, is that why they wear the kippas, to cover their horns? Anyway, that story just amazed me. I read the book about, what's it called? The Jew Store. And it was about an actual, dry goods store in the South and how all that happened. That was her real story. So then I just got involved in dance. I wanted to do nothing but dance. And Mom took me to my first dance class at 7 years old. And then I got into the ballet company and went on a trip to Chicago with the ballet company. And our group that went, we got tickets to see Fiddler on the Roof. And I was 14 years old. And I remember the dance teacher said, I want to sit next to you, because I was the only Jewish girl in the group, and just to ask you questions. And okay, so this was huge. I was there to dance, and here I am, like emotional over Fiddler on the Roof, seeing Topol in it, and talking to my dance teacher and being important to him enough to tell him more about what was being portrayed on stage. It was wonderful. Anyway, so then I guess in college, then I became very active in B'nai B'rith, the BBYO group. And I was president of the Florida region. And then in the early 70s was a lot of Soviet Jewry happening. So I felt very strongly I was learning a lot about the whole movement and the refuseniks and really what happened here in America as the youth groups and other Jewish groups became more aware. We really kind of shamed Russia into doing something about it. So it continued into my first year of college wanting to make a difference. But when you're that age, you think you can. And then no one was really on board. And I went like, but wait, we have to find world peace right here in the quadrangle at the University of Florida. Why not? You know, no, they weren't having it. So I went running off to the theater to paint sets and found my love there in theater. So.
Well, I have to tell you that at about the age that your mother took you to dance class, my mom took me to dance class too, in Bermuda, right?
Oh, wow.
Yes, Miss Menorgan's School of Dance. And I was very proud to perform as a pink tulip, right?
As a pink.
Yes.
It's like, it's classic, you know, and chorus line, and you dug right down to the bottom of your toes and you felt what a pink tulip felt. It's amazing.
It was a part of our lives. It was something garden, and they wanted to give me a bigger part, by the way, as a rabbit. And I informed my mother that I was not going to appear in a big brown towel with a big cotton ball on my butt, right? So
You spoke out even then. You
yes.
knew what you wanted. Yes.
Well, you know, this speaking out stuff kind of just bubbles up, doesn't it? And we
It
get to
does.
do all kinds of things, as you have indeed. I love the idea of you coming to Chicago. Who was performing the Fiddler on the Roof? Do you remember?
Fiddler on the Roof, it was Topol did the main role. I was 14. I don't remember all the rest of the cast, but
Right.
or where the theater was even. It might have been near, is it Old Town? Is that part of in Chicago? I didn't know Chicago very well, but yeah, it was a great experience.
So it inspired you for sure in moving forward into this world and finding
Yeah.
a place for yourself in theater and dance and being Jewish in the meantime. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And so it was very exciting. I went to New York after college. I went ahead and got my degree in theater.
Okay.
And New York, what I thought I was going as a dancer, but I was too short, not good enough, you know, just kept trying. And it was like, then it became winter, and then it was like Florida girl in New York. And so Dad said, why don't you just come home and take a different look at everything, and then you can always go back. And that's all it took. And I was down there, and I got into a group, touring group called the Lemon Twist Showstoppers. And oh my gosh, they were a tap dancing review. And I thought, we were touring everywhere. And I thought, I don't want to just dance. I want to, you know, write something, a play, a small snippet, still staying with the vaudeville style. And they said, okay, we'll try it, but I don't think it's going to go over. And it was like, bring on the girls, you know. So friends of mine saw it and they said, you've got to get out of this. So anyway, but I was always trying and stopping and trying and stopping. And then finally I did get down to South Florida, got my equity card and union card in theater, and yeah, kept working, choreographing and dancing and doing other shows. And then I got married and had my 3 sons. And yeah. So that was fabulous. And that's really what took me into the teaching of the arts, is because I thought as soon as I had my first son, I just said, I'm not going to do anything else, but we're just going to play in the living room and not go anywhere. You don't have to go to school. It'll just be us forever and ever. And my friend said, he needs to go to school. So took him to preschool, then the next one and the next one. And by the time the baby was in preschool, I just was lurking in the hallways, you know, in the shadows. And they came out and said, look, if you're going to stay here, why don't you try teaching? And so I did, and preschool is very much about teaching through all kinds of art. And so I did that for 6 years. And then when they went on to school, a regular school, I auditioned for a show, and I worked with what was called the Mendez Foundation for 26 years. I just retired, and I was in a children's show. We were Walkabout Puppets, teaching life skills, teaching drug and violence prevention. And then I wrote 2 shows called the Talk It Out Show and this Bully of Cyberspace County about cyberbullying. And so all of that, I mean, it just made sense to me to teach young people by listening to songs that were repetitive, you know, kindergarten, first, second, and third, when you're teaching them to stop and think. That's so important. These are tools that they'll have in their back pocket when, you know, something happens and they're weighing the options. And these are just life skills, but they went out singing the songs and, you know, feeling good about it. And you had these bad characters with drugs and they're yelling out, no, stop, don't do it. And so they're engaged. And how much better to teach them that way than just say, and teach them wonderful life skills instead of just teaching them, no, don't. Feel good about yourself. You can make good decisions. Think about it. You know, you're too good. The group was called Too Good for drugs and too good for violence. And children they're too good to get involved in that.
Well, that sounds amazing that we all know that the arts really embed these ideas in us before we even know it. The music, the dance, everything, you know, it just kind of goes through the whole system. Yeah. And you're just having a good time. You don't realize what amazing concepts you have suddenly grasped. Yeah. So what made you go for the Dr. Ruth thing?
Well, then, let's see, after all the time that I worked for the foundation, I would do shows here and there, at least 1 or 2 a year to kind of feed my passion for theater. And then a friend of mine decided she wanted to do the Dr. Ruth show in Dalton, Georgia. Ooh. And that, I think that is where Jed came down from Chattanooga and saw the show. And I said, there's no way I could do a one-woman show and work full time and drive, you know, an hour and a half for rehearsals and learn. And I'm going, and I decided, who am I kidding? Do a one-woman show about Dr. Ruth? So I did it. And it was a fantastic experience. Oh my gosh. And I've done it since at a theater here in Atlanta. And I think we're going to plan to do it again. Then there's a theater in Madison, Wisconsin, and possibly in Austin, Texas. So it's become a kind of a thing to do her show. It just is so meaningful. I actually got her phone number through her daughter as an okay to call her. And she answered the phone. It was 2.5 years ago. She was 90. She was 91, 92. And I was trying to be so careful when I called to make sure she would be rested and, you know, and explain how I got her number. She gets on the phone. She was so adorable. She goes, hello, yes. And she was just this wonderfully energetic person who was about to go on an interview. And she was like, oh, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not even ready with any questions. I just was trying to be so careful. And she goes, yes, what do you want? To have a question? I'm ready to go out for an interview. I need to go. Here, call this number and you make an appointment with me and we'll talk. And she was out the door. And but just that little interaction was so much fun because
I bet it was.
she just blew me away. She's, first of all, so positive, and that's her whole life has been based on being an optimistic person. She could have been such a bitter person who was taken away from her family at 10 years old, the only family she ever had until she, of course, had children married. But
yes, tell us a little bit about that, about her history.
her history is amazing. Yes, at 10 years, so 10 and a half years old, she was taken to her mother and grandmother. Her father was taken away first, and she saw him actually being put onto a truck, and he turned around and he smiled. So just giving her that gift of a smile. And then because he was in a camp, a work camp, not a concentration camp, they said she would be eligible for the kinder transport. So when they found out she was eligible, her mother and grandmother were, of course it was hard, but so pleased that they could give her that opportunity. So they took her to the train station in Germany and said goodbye. And she decided to smile at them like her father smiled at her. I just think that's so beautiful. So they would not be sad. And they had letters going back and forth, but soon the letters stopped. And at 17, she had spent 6.5 years at Wartime, which was a children's home in Switzerland. And then from there, she went to Israel and she fought in the Haganah, the underground Jewish army.
Yes.
She was terrific. She was a sharpshooter and small and fast. And so they really used her a lot to get around. And but she was injured. She was shot and part of her foot was blown off. So she was not able to continue. But at that point is when she met her first husband, who was in the medical field. And so she married. And from there, they went to Paris, and then they divorced, and she married again. And they had an opportunity. Now she got money from Germany, for those whose education was taken away.
Yeah. So that was after long after the Holocaust.
Right after she served in Israel, and after she had moved to Paris, and
so they gave her
money,
reparations, as it were,
exactly,
for destroying her life. Yeah, I mean, money doesn't exactly fix anything, but it does give you an opportunity, which I guess she took.
She definitely took. She and her then second husband, they went to America. She went to New York, and they found a place in Washington Heights, and she kind of stayed there. She got pregnant, and she had her daughter Miriam, and but she kept studying, and she got a job with Planned Parenthood, which caused her to start to really realize that there are women who become pregnant. She worked with women in Harlem, and she knew what it was like to lose control over her life. And she wanted to help these women have control over their lives, because it wasn't so much the choices they made about their lives, but the choices that they didn't make. And that's in the show. Here they were, they were pregnant. They didn't make the choice. They couldn't. And so it is beautiful. And that led her on and on to finally get her doctorate of psychology, of teaching certificate too. She taught, and she has taught in all the universities. And so then she got her, she went back to get a degree as a as a therapist, as a licensed sex therapist, because she wanted to help people. This is the basis of our lives. This is how we are alive, is
Yeah.
through sex. Yeah.
So this connection between you and Dr. Ruth, in which you continue her rather colorful comments on life. She was
She does have
definitely
some colorful comments. Yes.
which
It's pretty funny, you know. It's like, can you say that on TV? Can I say that? Of course I can. But a little woman like that with an accent, she can say anything, right?
can
Oh
you
my goodness.
imagine how your audience absorbs this? What do you leave them with when you do this show?
Thank you for asking. The best part about doing theater is the comments you hear afterwards, and knowing that people are leaving. Any theater is like it's a slice of life. So if they leave with a different perspective, a new way of looking at things, what a gift. And so many people said that we had no idea what she went through. We had no idea that she lost her family in the Holocaust. What a positive person. I identified with her. A lot of those comments, and it's just been a wonderful gift to give. And it's also a bridge between finding optimism in the face of all the hate. And we're seeing that now. And we have to combat that hate with positivity and love. As hard as it is, we have to turn it around. We have to put a mirror up to people's faces and say, this is, we are all the same. We're in this boat together. We have to come together on this. And I went through what I went through, but there's power in forgiveness. There's power in taking your experience and moving forward in strength. And so if that's what people gain from this, and she could do it, maybe I can do it too. I don't know. I just think she speaks volumes to young people and to everyone today.
Yes, well, I think that's exactly what we need in the arts. Theater, of course, the arts do this so well. It opens up a window into another person's mindset, soul, culture, right, in ways that are just so engaging that we stop for a little bit, at least, thinking we're too diverse, we're very different, we don't care, go away, kind of thing, you know. And so I'm delighted that you're doing this kind of work, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes, because I think it's really needed, that's for sure. And I hope that the audience, that you will understand why it's so important to support theater and the arts, and make sure, right, that you expose your kids to it as well as yourselves, because the next generation is going to need this even more. Right? We're so separate on the internet, and with COVID, you know, so isolated.
So isolating. This is so different. And it's so necessary to get theater going again, so that young people don't forget that this is such a wonderful venue.
Yes.
And it's okay to also feel your emotions. I saw my sons and their wives, you know, emotional about this, and I said, wow, it's so good. A lot of people, you know, like you said, you forget let everything go and just feel.
Yes.
I think a lot of times we're not feeling. And these days, it's like, even politically, I've talked to people who have said, it's not even a matter of talking or, arguing, even looking someone in the face and arguing with them. It's simply a matter of taking sides, and everybody takes a side. That's the side I'm on. There is no talking. And I'm going, wow, this is scary.
I agree. I totally agree. And it's one of the reasons I do what I do,
Yes. Oh, yes. God bless you. It's like, well, when I heard you say you're building the Jewish Cultural Center in Chattanooga, right? And then you had to actually stop and say, I want this to be a beautiful building, but more than anything, I want it to be a safe building. And it's like,
I know. Yes, there were. I remember that meeting. We had received some threats and had to look at what was happening in the world. There was an incident in California, for example, of attacks on Jewish buildings. And I remember sitting at a restaurant with the architect, and the television was on showing the police at the building escorting the staff, and then the kids in the nursery school escorting them out.
While you were talking to the architect for the Jewish Cultural Center?
Yes. So we had,
Okay, God is speaking to you now, architect. Wow.
We better rethink this particular plan. And we did. And that was, almost 20 years ago. And here we are with what is going on in the world.
Right.
And it is not to mention this, it is disappointing, not to mention scary to see it. And it is wonderful to have people like you being up on stage, doing what you do in such a public manner, right? And that counts so much, right? You can't be silent.
Right. And it's peppered with humor. So it's like the sugar makes the medicine go down, but the show, a Jew grows in Brooklyn. It's a takeoff on The Tree Grows in Brooklyn, but it was a one-man show, a whole comic review, and he spoke on Jews becoming comics because they grew up during that time before, all the hotels in the Catskills, and that's where it was really growing strong. But their parents would be the thin walls. They could hear them crying at night because they've lost their whole family in the Holocaust. But then during the day, it was humor that got them through. It was all the other couples and young families that were now in America growing up. So they looked to that humor to kind of grow them, to get their roots and be strong again. Gosh. So you have the tears and the laughter are just right there to keep us strong.
And for those of you that are not familiar with what the Catskills are and represent, right? There's a mountainous region in New York, outside of the city for sure, where there were a number of hotels that did offer Jewish comedians and Jewish food. And I have to tell you, my dad took us all up there one time, to see it. And it was quite an experience. And one you never forget. And that's the beauty of
Source of
art.
pride.
You don't forget it.
Right.
You know, you may not remember all the details, but something about it, you know, the inspiration, the environment, right? It just it enables you to think about things in a big way.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
what you do too. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap this up?
I don't think so. I just hope that I can in my small way continue doing and build on wonderful work that you do and so many people, and it's a hopefully it's a good time in our lives. I'm going to turn this around and we're going to be positive about it. There we go. Optimistic.
It is.
So, it is.
It is a time for creativity, right?
Yes.
And
Right.
imagination to move forward. We must.
Right.
There you go. All right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
So much.
Thank you, Deborah.
Well, it's a pleasure. Audience, I thank you, Eileen.
Yes.
Not only do I thank you, but when I end this podcast, would you please stay on? I have a couple of more questions for you.
Okay. Wonderful.
All right. I hope that we can do something like this in, say, a year, and you report to us how it's going, where you've been, you know, what changes you've seen, and
Yeah.
that would be wonderful. Okay.
It's a date.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.